Good morning and welcome to a special National Conveyancing Week podcast, which is being hosted by today's Conveyancer. Now I'm going to be talking to Mike Harlow of HMLR, who you all know well, I'm sure. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Looking forward to, well, we're halfway through now National Conveyancing Week because we recorded this a few days before National Conveyancing Week, so I am really looking forward to next week. Got lots of interest, so it's going well.
Good. I'd look forward to getting the T-shirt in the post, perhaps.
Okay, yeah. Well, they're available on the web store, so if you want one, Mike, you can go and purchase one for all the HMLR staff, if you like. Look, thanks for taking the time to talk with me today and becoming part of NCW 2024. Let's get straight into the discussion. Most of the following questions have been submitted by my membership and other conveyancers out there. We last recorded a podcast in October 2023, and hasn't that time flown by? And in that podcast, if I remember correctly, you said you hoped that by the spring of 2024, and apparently spring has now sprung, but if you look out my window, there's no spring, that the registration backlog would have been reduced substantially. In fact, so much so there will be no outstanding registrations over 1 year old. Have you reached that target? And if you have, what is the next target, perhaps?
Thank you. Well, look, it is our first concern, the speed of service, and I know the burden that having lots of cases post-completion that haven't been completed creates. It creates not just a burden in terms of the number of cases, but also often the complexity of dealing with requisitions or a number of applications on the same title that are backing up. So that's why it is our first concern as an organisation. We are making progress. The most important thing, I think I mentioned it when we spoke last time, was we just need absolutely the right number of people with the right capability in the organisation to deal with the volume of applications, and that's been as far as I can work out, the largest effort in recruitment and progression that the organisation's ever made was conducted last year. We had 800 people in training to move them on to dealing with those older and more complex cases. That they basically finished their work, their training work, towards the end of last calendar year, and we're really seeing the fruits of that now. We have had 5 successive months of the volume of work in the backlog coming down. Last month was the highest output from the organisation that we have recorded since we changed the way we record things and did it by kind of effort of case, which was about 4 or 5 years ago. The age of the case is coming down on all types of cases. We're not where we hope to be, but that was a target, not a not a sort of central forecast or an expectation. But we are progressing. We believe that even though we're hitting record output levels, that actually there's power to add there, and power to add simply because all those people who are now established in those new roles, they will naturally still put in quality first, and that's obviously our first concern. They will naturally get quicker at their work. So I feel that when I speak to customers, they too are seeing the fruits of this and seeing the oldest cases getting younger. So it's heading in the right direction. We're able to reduce the overall size of the backlog and the age of the oldest cases, and so we're not, we have power to add. So we want to see how that settles down, because we're only a couple of months into a new year with those all those people who have been trained in their new roles. Before we then think, okay, what sort of trajectory does that give us? So I'm hoping that everyone else is sort of seeing that already. That's the feedback I'm getting from our surveys and individual conversations. And I'd like to come back to you and talk to you in a couple of months, perhaps, about a little bit more confident forecasting where that will get us to by when.
Okay, so I suppose the bottom line is then that they're coming out the back end quicker than they're going in the front end at the moment.
Substantially so, yeah.
So there is an end in sight then at last.
Yes, yeah, and it's, I think in the past we perhaps given the suggestion that we are, relying on technology coming to kind of increase the productivity and efficiency. That is also part of our plan, but that's not something that we're baking into our forecast. We are simply relying in terms of forecasting where we're going to get to on having enough people, not just to deal with the number of cases coming in today, but plus the backlog of cases, because you need more than par, if you like, in order to bring a backlog down, and that's clearly where we're up to at the moment. So that capacity is there. It will continue to consume. Everyone in that capacity is going to naturally get a bit quicker at what they're doing. So yeah, it's all looking pretty positive at the moment.
So it's a case of remaining patient then. Progress is definitely being made, which is great.
Yeah, and people should see it becoming easier, and the oldest cases particularly, our focus is first and foremost on those oldest cases, because those are the ones that we know create more problems for people, more work for people. So and that's where if we can get those down fastest, then it should get easier for everybody generally, and then we'll be able to kind of finish the job off and bring everything back to a speed of service that people really need.
Okay, great. Well, maybe we can have another chat about this in the summer, when summer really comes, as opposed to spring pretending it's come at the moment. So you mentioned numbers and training. So I've skipped down my order of questions a bit, because I've got a question on that. And the question revolves around consistency, and is one that most businesses and professions face, no doubt, including conveyancing. If two very similar applications are submitted to the Land Registry, one can sail through with no requisitions being raised, but with the other application, it's sometimes the opposite. Where are you with new employee numbers now, and training? And I know you've touched on this slightly already.
Yeah. So it's a major concern and a major factor in how we are organising ourselves in a number of ways. So absolutely, you have to work on consistency all the time. We are making some special efforts on that, because it matters a lot. It matters a lot to overall efficiency, but also matters to quality. Okay, we very clearly we need to make sure that people can 100% trust in ownership in England and Wales. So first of all, we are looking at all our practice guidance internally, just to make sure that people really understand how to apply it consistently, and making sure that people are supported in making really good judgments about whether a requisition is really necessary or not. We're also making sure that people are working on casework of a similar type, so that they become familiar, both as a team and as an individual, with how certain types of, sometimes quite unusual work, but still there's quite a flow of that unusual work, how that should be handled, rather than bumping into something they're not familiar with, and therefore maybe handling it differently to how another caseworker would have handled it. So getting teams familiar with certain types of work, supporting them with better guidance so that they can make really sound judgments about what to raise a requisition on. That all matters a lot, as does building their experience, sitting them with experienced people, making sure that that ability to judge, not just apply a set of rules, but judge how to handle things, is handed down from the more experienced people to people who are newer to the organisation. So absolutely, completely understand how if you do see something that's frustrating, that's possibly feels quite unnecessary, and dealing with the implications of that must feel a bit painful. Sorry about that. Something that every organisation, as you say, works on, and we're particularly focused on it.
Is there an average length of time it would take to train somebody up from start?
That's a good question, because
it's just, sorry, Mike, when my first boss told me it would take me 12 years to become a conveyancer. I think he was wrong. It took me much longer than that, but I'm just wondering what it takes a caseworker.
Well, that's a good analogy, because what did your boss mean when he said it took you 12 years? I think he probably meant took you 12 years to become a master of the art of conveyancing.
To understand 99% of it, yeah.
Exactly, so that you could deal with anything that came through the door.
Yeah.
But you'll know that you had people working with you as trainees or assistants who could do, they quite quickly probably do 60 or 70% of the work. It's just that you needed to be there for, the slightly unusual combinations or permutations that, life throws at, the way conveyancing works. And that's exactly the same in land registry. So you can be trained quite quickly to do certain types of work. What happens is that you need, support or technicians there, who are there, and it's all built into the way we work, to deal with the exceptions, the things that, I wasn't expecting that, and what happens when it's done this way. So that's it's an evolving career path. You sort of build your ability to do this and that, and then on top of that build your technical expertise. And we have technicians who actually who don't do casework themselves. They support. They're so deep into the really complex areas of property law and land registration, but actually their role is solely to be an advisor on the tricky stuff.
Questions keep springing into my mind as we're speaking, Mike, so apologies, but what's your employee retention rate like? Because it's quite difficult in conveyancing at the moment.
Yep.
Do you tend to keep new employees?
We have had one of the lowest turnovers, I think, of any organisation, and in the public sector as well. How much of that, I think, is partly to do with just the way people, in previous generations, just got into a career and stuck with it. I don't know how much these days people will say, once I found a good career and a good profession, I'm going to stick with it. I don't, that's a sort of societal trend. Generally, we have low turnover. We are we have 14 offices around the country. We have we are quite significant employers in quite a few of those locations, and it's quite lovely actually that there are some places where there are 3 generations of one family working in the office. So there's quite a tradition of working for land registry in some of those locations, and a lot of people who probably join not thinking they would stay for 40 years. But I've handed out a lot of 40-year service certificates, and one 50-year service certificate, which slightly beggars belief, really.
Well, it's actually my 50th year in this profession, Mike. I started in 1974, so I'll have to make myself a certificate, I think.
I can honestly, I don't know what to say. I can't believe that.
That's the right thing to say. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's move on if you don't mind. So turning now to the new lender updates, with 10 lenders at the moment, I believe. Is this working? Are you getting positive feedback? And will it be expanding out to more lenders?
Yeah, so this is just so everyone understands, I guess, this is us sharing with the top 10 lenders by volume, which I think is about 80% of the market actually. It's sharing with them where their charge registration is at if it's with us.
Absolutely.
So knowing that, they can then know, well, it either should be with you, or that's fine because that means it's registered and all's well. Which means we very much hope, and this is what the lenders say to us, that they can stop chasing everything and just chase the exceptions, the things that do appear to have been to have gone off the radar. The feedback that we've had from the lenders is this is fantastic. This is, it really does. It's a game changer. It saves us a lot of effort, and we very much hope it saves our conveyancers a lot of effort too. The feedback we've had from conveyancers is similarly, this is great. What I don't know, and your members may know, is how much that has already fed through, because obviously, we've had a bit of time, but I don't know a bit of time of getting the data to the lenders, but I don't know how much the lenders have been able yet to change their processes to make sure that they're able only to chase the things that are exceptions. But the feedback I've had is, it's all good, and I've not had anyone say yet to me, but you may know different, it hasn't changed as a result. So I don't know what happened there, but it does seem a positive step in making life easier.
Yeah, I think it is positive. There was a little flurry of activity with me, I think, when this first started a few months ago, and it was all positive. I've not heard much since then, and I think it's a case of no news is good news.
Yeah.
So there's no complaints. There's nobody shouting from the rooftops, it's brilliant, but I think probably that's because it is brilliant, and it's just not happening in the numbers it used to.
Yeah.
No doubt after this podcast goes out, members will be emailing me saying that's wrong. And if that's the case, I'll come back to you. But I don't think so.
If so, I'd like to know. So please do pass those comments on. But as to where we take this next, well, it is a big stride, because it's 80% of the market, but it is only a sort of step on the way of giving people who are conveyancers are applying on behalf of, the transparency about where their application is at, that they should reasonably expect, really. So yes, we would want to extend it to other lenders. We would also want the same for citizens themselves, which is the public sector word for people. If I'm a conveyancer applying on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith can come to the Land Registry and get a copy of their title. Why couldn't they also find out, if they wanted to, where their application at? It is their application after all. Being able to do that in the future is within our vision of how our services would work. So again, they wouldn't have to phone us. They wouldn't have to phone their conveyancer if they were concerned about where their application was at. They should be able to find that out direct.
Okay, brilliant. The next question is a little bit technical. You may have to go away and come back in a few weeks' time on this one. But according to one conveyancer, there appears to be a new issue with mapsearch, in that when you click on a freehold title, it doesn't necessarily show all of the leasehold titles registered against the freehold title. Now, apparently you used to do this and do it well. You now have to click on the various different parts of the leasehold titles to try and work out how many leases are registered against the whole freehold title. Do you know if this is a recent change and why it's implemented?
I obviously should know and could and can get you the answer. Unfortunately, you kindly gave me a bit of a heads up about this yesterday. In the time available, I've not been able to find out the full answer. What I suggest we do is make sure that your members get the answer and find a way of perhaps posting the answer with this podcast by the time it goes out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thanks, Mike. A bit of a wide-ranging question now, but how is the land charges project going?
So this is the local land charges, not to be confused with the old-fashioned land charges, which were mortgages over unregistered land.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'm old enough, as I said, to know that. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly, which still exists. So the local land charges is our project in collaboration with the 331 local authorities, I think it is, where we are digitising, that part of the local authority search. It's going really well. I mean, the service that you get after it's been digitised in the, I think now 89, 90 local authorities where that's happened, I think it speaks for itself. It's an instant service online. It's £15, which is well below the average charge prior. You can go back in and get an up-to-date version of it for free for the following 6 months, just to, if you wanted to refresh it, if the conveyance, for some reason the conveyancing stalled a bit and you think, I wonder if anything's changed. And it's instant. It's also, we've done quite a lot of data quality improvements, given a spatial extent to every charge as we've gone through. So and what we're seeing is that there more people are using it in terms of the types of organisations are using it than we believe did local land charges searches before. So estate agents, for example, are seemingly doing this quite frequently. We notice from the customer accounts that we've got, because it's once you've migrated, you don't then go to the local authority. The local authority then stands down that part of their service. So and we've had positive feedback about the service people then get because of that speed and ease, and no sense that people are using it actually more or less, because it wasn't easy to get information out of local authorities about how much people were using it before. So I think it's all good where it's been migrated. We are going as fast as we can. We would love, if we could, to in a very short space of time migrate the rest, but it's a massive effort. It's a huge program. I mean, there's just millions and millions and millions of pieces of information, and it's one of those parts of the digitization of the conveyancing process where there's no shortcut. It's just a massive mountain of paper to get through, and we're going as fast as we can without compromising on quality. But we've industrialized the process now. It's really, and this is not doing down the sophistication of it, but it is really about turning the handle on it and just getting it through it as quickly as we can, but without ever compromising on quality. It's a foundation stone of a truly digital, upfront, information-driven conveyancing process, and I think it's a bit of a flagship for how we should do things in the future.
Yeah, you mentioned agents doing it more and using it more and upfront information, and I wonder if agents are using it more because of the new or the recent material information changes that the NHC comply with.
Yeah, and that helps, right? Because one of the barriers, because you were involved in this, one of the barriers to sort of getting people to get in the swing of upfront information years gone by was, it costs quite a lot, takes quite a long time. Have people got both the money and the patience before they put the property on the market? Well, if it costs barely, it doesn't cost much, and it's instant, you've removed those barriers. So what's the issue?
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. A couple of questions now, or a few questions based around the infamous or famous Building Safety Act. Could HMLR start collecting data noting on the title of the building in which a flat is located if it's over 5 stories as confirmed by the freeholder management company, whether a leasehold property is shared ownership, and if it is shared ownership property, if it's subsequently staircases? Sorry, there's quite a few questions in there.
Should we also take, you had one again, you kindly shared questions. Should we take the one about deed of certificates as well?
We can jump on angle you like, Mike. Could HMLR allow landlords and leaseholders deeds of certificates to be registered to make sure they do not go missing in future years, which they inevitably will? Yeah.
So I think we're always open to debating what information should be held by Land Registry or any authority or party within the property market, and I think that's part of the open debate that we should have about how we make the whole conveyancing process work best. At the moment, the Department for Levelling Up, which is our sponsor department, is really pushing for land transparency to be the transparency of ownership to be the kind of key thing that Land Registry focus on in terms of additional information it might hold. So people will be aware that there was a consultation and proposals around options over land that businesses hold, contractual controls as it's called, that we would hold as part of the register. There's also been a recent consultation on beneficial ownership. To what extent should ultimate beneficial ownership be registered to? Those are the policy priorities of the Secretary of State and the Department for Levelling Up. It's interesting that those suggestions have been made. I would like actually to spend a bit more time with the sector talking about what that information looks like and where best it is held. I think there was a time when Land Registry would be the obvious place for everything to be held because it was a single authority, you knew where it was and you could always go back to it. But in the age of things like property logbooks and cloud storage, then actually there are some things where the easier thing, the cheaper thing, the most available thing is another system, and maybe a private sector service. So I think it's a really good question. It's rooted absolutely in the right thing, which is once you've got this, you shouldn't lose it, because the next the owner, next time they do a transaction, the next set of professionals will want the same information. But is Land Registry the best place for it? I think we should debate that.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, there is a property logbook. There has been a property logbook session in National Conveyancing Week this week. I know we're recording this before, so it's a bit confusing for me. But on the Monday, there was a property logbook session, and no doubt they will have been talking about that then. And it'd be interesting to see how property logbooks develop in the coming months and years.
Indeed.
I think my final question is to do with digital signing. So digital signing, with all of the recommended safeguards in place, appears to be the way forward. However, you just have to look at Practice Guide 82, excuse me, to see why people are reluctant to engage. It is long and complicated for what needs to be a simple process. Ideally, Land Registry needs to work with one provider and set out the requirements succinctly in, say, 5 steps. Do we have any more updates on which lenders have actually confirmed they will accept e-sign charges? We know, for example, Nationwide will accept them, but would HMLR accept an e-signed nationwide mortgage?
So, first off, I completely agree that electronic signing is the future and the now, actually, for 2 reasons. It's more secure, if done well, and it is more convenient. So what's not to like? There's no compromise. There's no trade-off in it, really. And the most secure and actually the most convenient are a thing called the qualified electronic signature, which we don't have in any meaningful way in this country at the moment, but other countries have used. And the reason that's the sort of the gold standard in both convenience and security is you don't need a witness. What you end up with is a deed that is encrypted so that no one could, deny what they signed, and also who they were and how they were identified is also built into that, that encrypted deed. So it's super. I'll come on to why we haven't quite seen that yet, but I think we're seeing the green shoots of it emerging in the economy. At the moment, we've got 2 types of signing that really took off during COVID. We've got what's called mercury signing, which is actually wet signing of a one sheet of a deed and being scanned back in, and then the deed being reassembled. That was the kind of COVID a COVID measure, if you like. And then there's electronic signing on platforms that the solicitor then confirms have been done in a certain way. Now, our guidance was worked up with solicitors who actually use it. We've changed it half a dozen times already, I think, in response to their requests to make it, dovetail more neatly with the way the world works. I think part of this is about less reading the practice guidance and more seeing what it looks like in practice, because it may be that practice guidance, a bit like a Haynes manual for a car, reads in a quite complicated way, but if you then sit in a car, then you realize it's quite easy to drive. So there are commercial firms out there where I think their clients were more in the habit of e-signing in the first place, who tell me that 2/3 of their applications, 2/3 of their deeds, their transactions are now electronically signed. So there's a habit and a sort of familiarity point, I think, that people, once they're through that, if you like, then they're likely to find it a lot easier. There's a role for us in helping people understand that. I think there's also a role for us, the Digital Property Market Steering Group members as well, in making it clear in all our guidance and handbooks, etc., that this is a good way to go. So that's definitely a positive indication that we would make. We very much welcome their adoption along with digital ID checking, and ideally we'd move to qualified electronic signatures. At the moment, there isn't there is a sort of dearth of usable products in the market for qualified electronic signatures, but some really encouraging noises from some suppliers that will be happening soon.
Okay, I mean, there's obviously lots of different types of conveyancing firms out there. Some are more tech savvy than others, obviously, and there's lots of resources being put out by HMLR. Have you got, or can you put out an educational video on digital signing, perhaps?
I think we have one actually, and let me check back. I mean, if we have since you've given me an unintended platform to plug the Land Registry YouTube channel, which has all sorts of helpful videos on it on how to avoid requisition points, and I'm pretty sure we did one on electronic signatures as well. But it'd be worth having a look as to whether that's reflects the latest guidance and actually reflects the times we're in, which is probably less about explaining how you might do it and more about promoting why you might do it. Because I do think that I completely get how people in their busy lives, just getting through the work they've got is one thing. Contemplating some change is quite, do you have even the time to think about the change? So part of it is I guess, explaining why we think it would be good for people to adopt it, but also showing other people who've already adopted it. Because if you listen to the experience of somebody who's gone there and said, actually, I won't go back, it was a bit of a hump in learning and adopting the new technologies, but no, I wouldn't go back. That's really the best sell, I think. Well,
if you could let me know if there is a video or you're going to make a new one, that would be great, Mike. Okay. That's me done. Unless you've got anything else you'd like to add about HMLR and what's happening.
No, but you know where I am, and you can always come and ask me more. I do want to say, I think you and the organisers of National Conveyancing Week do a fabulous job. I think it's, as somebody who used to do that job myself, I do know how tough it is at times. I know the pressures, the fact that you can't always manage your work, the expectations on what you should do as the professional who's making it all happen. It's a pretty tough job and a pretty tough career, but it is immensely important. It keeps one of the most important parts of the economy going, and I think celebrating that and showing support for that is something I'm delighted to be a small part of. But you and all the organisers should be congratulated for doing so.
Thanks for that. But you're right, it has become an increasingly more complicated job, but I hope that trend is now going to start reversing, and the job becomes a little bit easier and a little bit more enjoyable for the conveyancers who carry it out. Mike, thanks for your time, as always.
Pleasure. I'll talk to you
again in a few months' time when summer's here. In the meantime, have an enjoyable spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.